Okay, so this is actually the most important Parsha class of the year. Not because of what I'm going to say, but because it's the one about the most important day in the year. The Gemara says, there's a dispute in the Gemara regarding every holiday, every Yom Tif. There is a dispute in the Gemara as to whether, Stan, great to see you, as to whether the Yom Tif, every holiday, do we have an obligation to eat and to enjoy, or are we able to and allowed to dedicate the entire holiday to Hashem, to be only and completely immersed in prayer and in study of Torah? That's a dispute in the Gemara. But then the Gemara says, Hakol Moedim, everyone admits and everyone agrees that with regard to the holiday of Shavuos, there is a mitzvah, it's obligatory to enjoy and to eat a meal, to have meat, to have wine. Why so? So that no one should say that we're disappointed in the present that is the Torah. That no one should say that we're unhappy with this obligation that the Torah expects of us. You don't celebrate homework. You don't celebrate having to study for tests. But Torah is something that we do celebrate, and therefore it's forbidden for us to engage merely in prayer and learning, which is being dov of Hashem and clinging to Hashem. It's obligatory for us to enjoy and have some meat and wine, etc. Not only that, Rav Yosef, the great Amora Rav Yosef from the Gemara, he told the people who were preparing the meal, he said, please prepare for me. I forget exactly what delicacy he said. Why? Why should they prepare this special delicacy for Shavuos? So Rav Yosef said, because Ilav ha-yoimo, if not for this day, Kama Yosef Ika Beshuka. How many other Yosefs would there be in the street? Meaning, I would have been another Joe Schmo. I wouldn't be the Rav Yosef that I am, and the Torah knowledge that I've acquired. I wouldn't be that. I would be another Joe in the street. And therefore, please prepare a special delicacy for Shavuos. What does this mean? What this means is, as we say all the time, everything starts and ends with the Torah. Torah is what teaches us everything. Torah is what guides us in everything. And therefore, this holiday, this Yom Tif is the most important. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, Sukkot, those are all great. But Shavuos is the clincher. Shavuos is what makes us a Kollel Yisrael. In fact, before we got the Torah on Sinai, we were a nation. We weren't called Kollel Yisrael, B'nai Yisrael. Yeah, literally, we were the sons of Israel because Yaakov's other name was Yisrael, was Israel. But we were not the nation of Yisrael, of Kollel Yisrael. And therefore, this is the most important class because it's about the most important day.
Can I ask you something, Rabbi?
Please do.
Since we didn't get the Torah on Shavuos, we got the Torah on Yom Kippur, how can we celebrate something we didn't get?
That is a fantastic question, Linda. Excellent question. There are numerous ways to go about this, but you know what? I happened to have been in Denver yesterday. I flew back yesterday. I was there on Monday. I was thinking of Leslie because it was snowing, and he always goes to Vail to go skiing, I know. And it was snowing. Monday night, it was snowing over there. Yeah, I heard that I came the wrong day because the Friday before that, it was about 90 degrees. I don't know. I thought St. Louis weather goes, you know what I'm saying? But Denver was unbelievable. Anyways, so when I was in Denver, I spoke at a siyum over there, or whatever it is. And afterwards, we were having a conversation with someone. Someone asked, because I was discussing the importance of making Kabbalah, of accepting something. And I was showing from different Gemaras, in the conversation, we were showing from different Gemaras the importance not of actually doing it necessarily, but that Hashem when he sees us accepting something, even though we didn't actually do it yet, it's as if we did it. So I think we can answer your question, Linda, with that idea. And that is, of course, the details, and many of the details we got later on. Moshe Rabbeinu came down, he went back and forth, and that was the golden calf. But bottom line is, when was Kabbalah Torah? When did we accept? When did we accept the Torah? That happened on Shavuos. Now, Nishma was said maybe a little bit later, but it's all part of the picture of we're accepting it on ourselves. And in Hashem's book, we know this, that there's something called Machshava Toiva HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzaref L'Maisa. A good thought, if we have an intention, a good intention of doing something, and then let's say, for example, someone calls you up and says, are you able to host a guest? Someone's visiting, they need a place to stay. And you say, yeah, sure, I'm going to make the beds. I'm going to go through the tircha of hosting them. And I'm going to, it's going to be a trouble, but it's my pleasure. And they end up not coming. You still get reward for that. So the Torah puts a very important emphasis on accepting it. So even though the details came later, and we didn't even know all the details yet, but we accepted it. In fact, there's a story that Rava, the Gemara says a story that Rava, the Amora from the Gemara, he was studying and so involved in his study that he didn't even realize that his fingers were bleeding. Somehow his fingers got stuck under his chair. He was so immersed, he didn't realize that he was bleeding. So there was a tzduki, a Sadducee that saw him. I think it was a tzduki, and he said to him, you Jews, the Torah Jews, are an Amap Ziza, which means a hasty nation. You accepted that what you didn't know. And Rava said in response, you know why we were able to accept so quickly, even though we didn't know all the details? Because we know that Hashem loves us. And since we're so certain that Hashem loves us so fiercely, we have ultimate trust in him that he's not going to tell us to do anything that we can't do. So where do we see that in the Kabbalah? If I actually do something, you know why I may do it? Because it makes sense to me. But if I say, Hashem, I accept whatever you say, I trust you, I know that you love me, and whatever you tell me to do, I will be able to do, that is what we're celebrating. So Linda, it's a fantastic question, but I think that this may be a possible answer to that question. Does that, Linda, are you makabel? You makabel? You accept? Okay, shtika kaida, silence. The Gemara says silence is like admitting. So Linda's okay with that answer. Okay, now.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, sure. Now, so that's one aspect of Shavuos, is the fact that the Torah is what makes us a Kollel Yisrael, makes us be called the Jewish nation. That's why I know, listen, I live in St. Louis for long enough, I know that corny jokes are the way to go. You'll get all the groans and all the things, but Lamaisa, St. Louis is St. Louis. So as much as rejuvenating is so chewed over that it's like, oh yeah, okay, great. That's the truth though. Why? Because listen to the diuk, listen to the inference in the words of Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, the Amora and the Gemara, he said, Ilav hai yoima, if not for this day. He didn't say Ilav hahu yoima, if not for that day, referring to the accepting of the Torah on Mount Sinai. He said Ilav hai yoima, if not for this day. What does it mean this day? Why didn't he say as if not for that day? You know why he said if not for this day? Because he wasn't referring to the day of the 6th day of Sivan in the year 2448, when the Jews were in Sinai and they accepted the Torah. That's not what he was referring to. You know what he was referring to? He was referring to Shavuos of the year that he was living. Every year we re-accept on ourselves, and the same thing that happened then happens this year. So we're not celebrating what happened 3,000 years ago. We're celebrating what's going to happen this year. And you know, not only that, on Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. Shavuos is also a day of judgment. What's it a day of judgment? For the fruits of the trees. Who's the tree? Yes, there's physical trees and fruits. Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. A person is a tree in the field. And what do we celebrate? What is the day of judgment? It's a day of judgment for the fruits that will come from that tree. Our spiritual energies and our spiritual potential, which we will be able to access and incorporate into our own essence and our beings and learn, that's decided on Shavuos. The amount of Torah study, the amount of mitzvahs we have, those are all called fruits of our tree. So Rav Yosef was saying, if not for this day, this year, Shavuos, how many Joes are going to be in the street? Because today is a day of judgment, my Shavuos. My being a Rav Yosef and being able to study Torah the way I try to and the way I strive for, that's all decided today. And therefore, Shavuos, says Rav Yosef, is the most important day. So it's not only that we're celebrating Hahu Yoima, that day of Shavuos, but we're celebrating Ha Yoima, this day of Shavuos, today, this year in Tafshin Pei Aleph, 5,781. This is going to be a whole new year for us. Yes, Leslie.
When you say that Shavuos is the day of judgment for the trees,
Yeah.
and then you say that Shavuos is this special holiday wherein we got the Torah,
Mm-hmm.
and the Torah is referred to as Eitz Chaim.
That's correct. Excellent.
So it's
really altogether, you're 100% right.
yeah.
100%. That's correct.
You can use that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so that's point number one of how Shavuos is not only celebrating what happened then, but for each and every one of us, it's a day of judgment and it's a celebration of what will be and what we can accomplish through this day of Shavuos. Rav Amram Goin takes it a step further even. Rav Amram Goin, who was one of the he lived before the Rishonim, the early commentators. He lived approximately 1,100 years ago. And he says, actually, what makes us a nation is the Torah. And I've told this to you in the past from Rav Shamshon Fall Hirsch, who was the leader of German Jewry. Shamshon Fall Hirsch. Any Yekas over here? Stan, are you a Yeka? You come from German background? Yeki. No? You're muted.
German, Poland, depending on where the borders were.
Okay. So I thought that name, but Joel, you're not a Yeka, right? Erlich could be. Yeah, it is, right?
Erlich's a German name.
Right.
It means honest in German. It's best I know we're Ashkenaz. If that's
You're Ashkenaz from Ashkenaz from Germany. Okay, so if Samson Rafal Hirsch is was the leader of German Jewry in the 20th century. Yeah, in the 20th century. Or the 19th century even. I don't know when he passed away. Maybe he passed away in the late 1800s, I believe. And he commented, the Pasuk says that Moshe told Klal Yisrael, Hayoim hazen nihiyeh sala'am. Today, when they were making the treaty by the mountain of Gerizim and Aval, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hayoim hazen nihiyeh sala'am. Today you are becoming a nation. So Rav Hirsch comments, what do you mean today we're becoming a nation? We already went out of Egypt together. We already accepted the Torah on Sinai. What does it mean now after 40 years? Today you're becoming a nation? So Rav Hirsch writes, it doesn't mean today you are becoming a nation. It means, like Rav Amram Goin says, with what you have today, you are a nation. Not today you're becoming a nation. With what you have today, you're a nation. What do they have? They had nothing. They were in the desert. They were surrounded by the clouds. They were eating the mun. They had nothing. You know what they had? The Torah. Torah is the only thing they had, and that's what makes us a nation. Of course, Eretz Israel is important. Of course, not only do we have brothers and sisters living there, but it's the land that the eyes of Hashem never cease to observe and to take care of it. Yes, notwithstanding the rockets. It's the land of Hashem's capital. But at the end of the day, what makes us a nation is not our land, is not our flag, and is not our anthem or our language. It's the Torah that makes us a nation. So what we're celebrating on Shavuos is, number one, like we said, is we're celebrating the fact that this is our acceptance of the Torah, or re-becoming a Yid, re-becoming a Jew, re-becoming connected to the Torah, and our future of the future year is dependent on that Shavuos. And number two, we're celebrating being a Kollel Yisrael, being together. That's the nation. Now listen, Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Har, and the Jewish people encamped next to the mountain. There's a famous pasuk in Rashi that says, like one man and one heart. Ki ish echad b'leiv echad. Was that a coincidence? It happened to be that when they were getting ready to accept the Torah, they were unified as one? Of course not, says the Meshech Chochmah. The only way we can accept the Torah is if we're unified completely. You know, people ask me now, the Kollel is working on bringing in a new team of Kollel rabbis. We hired the Rosh Kollel, and we're working on bringing in 5 new rabbis, in addition to the Rosh Kollel. So people say, so how many do you have so far? I explained to them, I said, there's 2 kinds of car seats. Anyone who deals with car seats or strollers will know what I'm talking about. There's a kind of car seat or stroller you stick one piece in, and then you stick the next piece in. And then there's a kind of stroller or car seat that you stick both pieces together, and then together you stick them in. I said, that's how you build a new kollel. You don't have one piece here, one piece there. No, no, no. You have to bring it all together, and then you could click it in, and you got yourself a kollel. The Torah works the same way. What makes us able to accept the Torah? Because you could do A, and I could do B, and you could do C, and someone else could do, no. Kollel Yisrael as one unit coming together. Hashem says, okay, you're unified. Now you're able to accept the Torah. So that was why by Yichan Sham Yisrael, we needed to come together as one to be able to accept the Torah on Har Sinai. That couldn't have happened otherwise. That's what we're celebrating. An additional factor, what we're celebrating is the unification, so to speak, or the unifier of the Torah, and allowing us to become and have that unit of Kollel Yisrael, of the Jewish people. That is point number 2. Point number 3 is a story. Here's a story about the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim, the Heilige Chafetz Chaim. You know, when I went to Eretz Yisrael for the first time, I went in the summer after 11th grade. I paid my own way. I had a day camp when I was younger. I earned some money and I paid for my flight. That was actually my first time on a plane, mind you. Back in those days when you never went on planes. Who's going on a plane? Now, every month you can Donnerstag, everyone's going on a plane. Anyways, so I come to Eretz Yushalayim. My father told me, before you go to the Kollel, before you go to the Western Wall, you should go to the mikveh to have some purification, limited, whatever it may be. So I go to the Kollel. And I have this feeling I can't describe. There's a certain sense of awe. Wow. This is from the Beis HaMikdash. This is from thousands of years ago. On the other side, the Kehanim used to do their avoid in the Beis HaMikdash and the sacrifice and everything. The next time I went, I didn't have the same feeling. The 3rd time, the 4th time. And I said to myself, if I live here, I'm not going to bring my kids all the time. I want them to have a certain feeling of, wow. There's a video that went around to the Chafetz Chaim. I don't know if you ever saw the video of the Chafetz Chaim. There's a 30-second, 45-second clip where you see the Chafetz Chaim, who died in 1933, you see him walking. Now, growing up, the Chafetz Chaim is a legend. They never really had good pictures of him. And when the first time I saw that video, I was so I was like, wow, the Chafetz Chaim, wow. And I decided I'm not going to show my kids the video. They'll get older. I mean, if someone shows it to them, so they show it to them. But let them get older. Let them appreciate who the Chafetz Chaim is. And then they'll see the video and have the jitters and have the awe that I felt when I saw it. So I don't know if you ever saw that video of the Chafetz Chaim, but if you could visualize who the Chafetz Chaim was, I'm going to tell you what the Chafetz Chaim said and the story of the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim was more angel than human, even though obviously you can't really say that, because you know why you can't say that? Because if you ask the Chazon Ish writes, who's on a greater level? Who's greater, a human being or a malach or an angel? Our knee-jerk reaction, if we didn't ask the question, is of course it's going to be an angel. But really, a person could be greater than an angel. We have free will, we have choice. We could grow. You know that malachim, angels, have only 1 foot. That's why by Kedusha, or by the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, we put our feet together to be like an angel. Why do they have 1 foot? Because they can't walk. They can't go higher. We could go higher. We could become greater. So the Chafetz Chaim was Gereser of Malach. He was greater than an angel. The Chafetz Chaim is sitting and learning. And his granddaughter comes to visit. His granddaughter, unfortunately, got chapped by the communism, etc., or the Haskalah. I think it was more the Haskalah in general, which was the enlightenment of the era then. And the Chafetz Chaim's granddaughter comes to visit her grandfather. She comes inside and she sees that he's studying from a big volume of Talmud, of Gemara, and she says to him, Zayda, what are you getting involved in? Why are you so busy with this archaic, ancient, old-fashioned stuff? Get with the times. Which that itself, I think, is very, just the fact that she was able to ask the question to the Chafetz Chaim, I think is very nice. And there's what to learn from that the Chafetz Chaim was her Zayda. Chafetz Chaim to us is a legend, but it was her Zayda, and she was able to ask the question. So the Chafetz Chaim turns to her and says the following. And remember that he passed away in 1933. So I don't know what year this took place, but Mistama was in the 19 teens or the 20s, I don't know. And the Chafetz Chaim says to his granddaughter, you know, people now are able to make planes. They could fly in the sky, right? And the Chafetz Chaim said, there's going to come a day that people are going to want to get to the moon, and they'll get there. The Chafetz Chaim continues and he says, you know, now people, they created this thing that you're able to throw out of the airplane, something that could kill people. You could bomb people. And the Chafetz Chaim says to her, soon they're going to be able to create such a bomb that could destroy a country. The atom bomb. And the Chafetz Chaim said to his granddaughter, Ze machten Luften. They're making planes. Ze machen Bombe. They're making bombs. Und die Torah macht Menschen. The Torah makes people. Says the Chafetz Chaim. You want to know why I'm involved in the ancient tombs of Talmud? Why I'm involved in the archaic laws of the Torah? Because you look outside, what are they doing? They're creating planes that are going to kill people, destroy countries. The Torah is making people. The Torah macht Menschen. What does the Torah do? And macht meilfa a mensch. It makes a person into a mensch. That's why I'm involved in Torah. That is what Shavuos is about. Celebrating the menschkeit. Celebrating who we are as a mensch. As a mensch. That's what the Torah does. There was a story, there's a guy by the name of Jack Cohn. He lived in Brooklyn, he passed away in 1976. By his shiva, there was a Rav who came to visit. The Rav's name was Rabbi Pollack, or Yaakov Pollack. He was a Rav in New York somewhere. He comes into the shiva house, He says, Mistama, you're wondering, why am I here? Jack didn't daven by me. None of the family davens by me. Why am I here? I'll tell you why I'm here. Because there was one time an elderly woman who went to Queens, by the cemetery in Queens, and she was waiting by the bus stops to take a bus home. And a fellow drives by, calls out in Yiddish out the window, do you need a ride? Where are you going? So the woman tells him where he's going. And he said, oh, I'm going right in that direction. Come on, I'll give you a ride. She gets into the car, and they're schmoozing on the way, just cordial schmoozing. He drops her off at the address, and that's the end of the story. A little bit less than a year later, this woman receives a phone call. And she says, hi, it's Jack Cohn. I just was thinking, we both have yahrzeit at the same time. I'm going to be driving your neighborhood anyways. Let me give you a ride to the cemetery. So he brings her to the cemetery, and he brings her home afterwards. And this went on for a number of years. Rabbi Pollack turns to the Cohn family. He says, that elderly woman was my mother. And that man who drove my mother back and forth to the cemetery was your father, Jack Cohn. That's why I'm here today. Chesed. Such a chesed to think ahead. But that's not the end of the story. When Rabbi Pollack told them the story, they thought, when's the yahrzeit? They start comparing dates, and they say, 1 second. First of all, our father didn't have yahrzeit on that date. And second of all, he didn't even live in the same area that your mother lived. Herta Maisa. He saw a woman there by the cemetery. He gave her a ride. He saw that she's an elderly woman who's taking the bus back and forth. Obviously, she doesn't have someone that's available to take her. He marked it down on the calendar. He calls her up. He says, I'm going there anyways. Yeah, like when someone calls you middle of the night. Oh, did I wake you? No, I had to get up to answer the phone anyways. I'm going there anyways, right? Because we have yahrzeit. Ki'ilu, he's not doing her a favor. That's chesed. The Torah macht Menschen. That's a mensch. That's menschlichkeit. That's what Torah does. And that's what the Chafetz Chaim said. That's why I'm involved in that. That's what we're celebrating. Listen to one more story, and then we'll get to something else. The story took place in February. Leslie, is anyone here from Brooklyn? Besides, I know Mimi's from Brooklyn. Anyone else from Brooklyn? Anyone else? No? No one. Bunch of out-of-towners. Right. My wife was at a chasana. My wife was at a chasana here in St. Louis. Okay? She was at this chasana. And it was a big chasana. It was a very nice chasana in one of these hotels. I don't remember exactly where it was. And she sees a woman who clearly, my wife didn't recognize her. She looked like she was visiting from out of town. So my wife said, Mazel Tov. My wife said to her, are you from out of town? She said, no. So my wife said, you live in St. Louis? She said, no, I live in New York. She was at the chassan in St. Louis, and my wife said, are you from out of town? Well, I know, I'm from in town. I happen to be out of town now, but I'm from in town. I'm from New York. Anyways, yeah, that's the way New Yorkers think. We love New Yorkers. They're all great. But this story happened in New York in Flatbush, actually. So you'll appreciate the story from the context of Flatbush and all the one-way streets that have no parking. Anyways, here's the Maisa. This story took place in the beginning of February, the middle of February. It was a Yid by the name of Yehoshua Stern who came to visit Eretz Yisrael. There was a blizzard going on, but he had a meeting. He had to come in for a meeting. He was meeting with a director of a girls' camp. Her name was Mrs. Hirschfeld. He was going to be employed by the camp. I don't know if it was in the kitchen or as a mashkiach. I don't know exactly what it was. Anyways, he flies in from Eretz Yisrael into this blizzard in Flatbush, and he borrows he's staying, whoever's house he's staying, he's borrowing his father-in-law's car. His father-in-law had an old Ford Taurus, and haven't seen many of those around. But anyways, he was driving this old clunker down the one-way street of Avenue N in Flatbush. There wasn't much traffic, but all of a sudden, he sees in his rear view mirror, there's a van zooming down the street behind him. And I mean, he's literally going to get smashed if he doesn't get out of the way. So Yehoshua did what most drivers would do. You don't put your pedal to the metal. He tried to get out of the way. When he got out of the way, so he was going to the right side, crunch. He smashed something. The side view mirror had smashed into a car on the right side. Now, this car on the right side wasn't a car. It was a Porsche. It was a brand new red Porsche. And Yeshua is like, I'm visiting from Eretz Yisrael. I'm driving this Taurus, and it's really not my fault. This guy behind me was zooming behind it. Who knows what would have happened? What am I supposed to do? Yeshua gets out of the car. He starts walking around, and he notices that not only is this a red Porsche, it's a brand new red Porsche. It had the temporary stickers on the back, temporary license plate in the back. And it says, when did he buy it? February 11th. And when's the day? What's today? It's February 12th. Hashem Yirachem. He smashed up the Porsche. It wasn't totaled, but he smashed it. The day after the guy bought it, a brand new Porsche. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, when you hit a car like that, there's something called a car alarm. In St. Louis, I don't think I've heard a car alarm go off. I can't imagine. I've never heard a car alarm go off. I'm sure cars have it, but I haven't heard it here. In New York, you hear it every 10 minutes. There's a car alarm going off, and the alarm for this Porsche starts screeching away and beeping. But it was freezing. It was snowy, and no one came outside. So what's Yeshua going to do? Yeshua calls Mrs. Hirschfeld, the woman he's supposed to meet, and he asks her to come down because he was already on the street that he was going to meet with her. She comes out of the house, and she sees the car that got smashed. Says, that car doesn't belong to anyone on the block. You probably just, who knows what kind of person is going to own the car. You really shouldn't, you shouldn't stick around. Their insurance will take care of it. What are you going to do? So Yeshua says, but I can't do that. It was an accident. I hit the car. What am I going to do? Mrs. Hirsch says, I'm telling you, it's not safe. It's not safe for you to stay around. The guy's going to kill you. He's literally going to kill you. You smash his brand new Porsche. Yeshua says, there's nothing I can do. I can't. We don't work like that. He takes out a pen and a paper and he writes a note. Please call me. I smashed your car by accident. I have insurance or whatever it is. Please call me. So he looks out the window. He goes to Mrs. Hirschfeld's house, goes to the meeting. He's looking out the window waiting for someone to come. 2 hours later, he sees a guy standing near the car in shorts. He's in his early 30s, and the guy is crying. And Yeshua is about to go outside to tell the guy, I'm the one who hit your car. And Ms. Hirsch says, you don't know who this guy is. The guy could go. Yeshua goes out. He says, excuse me, sir, is this your car? And this person, his name was Nick Accordo. You'll find out in a minute how we know his name. He says, he doesn't even register that Yeshua is talking to him. He's just crying and screaming, it's brand new. It's brand new. I just got it. How could this happen? Could you believe it? I had it for 1 day over here, and this is what happens? And Yeshua says, excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I'm the one who hit your car. It was an accident. I was just waiting here for a couple hours for you to come out. And Nick stops, and he looks at Yeshua, he says, no, I don't believe you. You're not from around here, are you? And Yeshua says, I'm telling you, it's me. All of a sudden, a woman comes out, Carmela. And Nick screams at Carmela and says, you hear this? A guy hit my car 2 hours ago. He's waiting around for me to come. Could you imagine? And Carmela's like, 1 second, you're not from here, are you? You're from New York? Yeshua says, no. So Yeshua gives him the insurance details, and And fine, he gives them the insurance, and that's the end of the story. Then 3 weeks later, Yeshua's father-in-law receives the following letter. Listen to this letter. Dear Mr. Wasserman, I wish to share my feelings with you about your son-in-law, Yeshua Stern, because he gave him as the mailing address. I've lived in New York City all my life, and I guess, as they say, people around here have an attitude problem. We always expect things to go a certain way. I always felt that people are self-centered, only caring about themselves. But on that cold, wintry day, a day that I will never forget, Yeshua changed my way of thinking. More importantly, he changed my attitude. It was an emotional time for my sister, Carmela, and me, for reasons Yeshua could not have known. My mother had died suddenly the night before. And at a time when I was basically angry at the world, Yeshua taught me that there are still individuals with a sense of responsibility, fair play, extreme honesty, and kindness. The aggravation I went through with the car repair was more than worth it for this lesson and for the privilege of meeting an unassuming, honest person like your son-in-law. I told many people at my mother's funeral about what Yeshua had done, and everyone was very impressed with his honor and humanity. I know that in heaven my mother is smiling because of Yeshua's kindness and uprightness. My mother always felt that I was too critical and mistrusting to people. Therefore, even though the events of that Wednesday delayed me, I trust you will forgive me for being late to her funeral. Respectfully, Nicholas Accardo. Kollel Yisrael is a light unto the nations. We have a mission and a job. What's our job? Our job is to be a shining light of a Yid. Our job is to take the Torah and say, these are the ingredients that's going to make us a mensch. As the Chafetz Chaim said, the Torah macht Menschen. And then we just live that way. We live that way at home. We live that way in the street. We live that way in the store. We don't have to go fly out to the far off countries and show them this necessarily. That's not the point. The point is that if I'm here in my Winkel and you're there in your Winkel, in your corner, and you're making that light and that flame ever so bright, that's the light unto the nation. That's what's taking the Torah macht Menschen. The Torah makes us a mensch, as the Chafetz Chaim said, and it spreads to Carmela and to Nicholas Accardo in New York, and it spreads to Jack Cohn's family and to Rabbi Pollack's family. It spreads and spreads and spreads. That, my friends, is what we're celebrating on Shavuos. So again, number one, we're celebrating the fact that Torah is something that we got. We became a Jew then, and we become a Jew again on Shavuos. We're celebrating and I guess nervous. We're praying for the fact that we should have a good day of judgment, a judgment for the fruits of the trees, as Leslie said, the fruits of the trees of our Torah, the fruits of the trees of our mitzvahs and our spirituality, which is determined and decided on Shavuos. We're celebrating the fact that we're a Kollel Yisrael, that we're a nation of Israel that only is connected through the Torah. That ultimately is what makes us a nation, as Rav Amram Goin said, as Rav Shamshon Fall Hirsch said. We are accepting the Torah. And by accepting the Torah, like Linda was pointing out, even though not necessarily we didn't actually do it yet, but it's like Hashem is looking for is the Kabbalah Torah. Accepting the Torah, we accept it. It's as if we did it. Obviously, as Hashem will live through the year to be able to actually do it. That's what we're celebrating, the fact that we're a nation of Kollel Yisrael. We accept it, and we're celebrating Vos Tut the Torah. What does the Torah do? The Torah is not a rule book. It's not a set of laws. Do this, don't do that. Do this, don't do that. You know, it says when Hillel Hazakin, someone came to the great sage Hillel and he said, I want you to convert me when I'm standing on one foot. And what did Hillel say? Hillel said, he said to him, my desani loch lechavrach leisavi. That which you is hateful to you, don't do to your friend. He said that's what the Torah is, and the rest is commentary. Now we look at that Gemara and say, oh, it means be a good person. It's more than that. If you do a favor for somebody, you give somebody life, you spend millions of dollars on somebody, you take care of their medical issues, you take care of everything they need. what do you expect from them? A little bit of gratitude, a little bit of akaras hatov. Excuse me. I think we would accept that. I think we would expect that rather. Hillel was telling the convert, or the person who wanted to convert, he was telling him, we owe our lives to Hashem. Everything we have, the fact that we can move our fingers, the fact that we could see, the fact that we can hear every detail of life, Hashem gave it to us. If we gave that to somebody else, we would want them to show some gratitude. And he says, that's what Hashem is giving us. My disani loch leisavid, zaya mensch. Just be menschlich. Menschlich to other people and menschlich to Hashem. So kumte. Hashem deserves it. He gave us whatever we have. Yeah, we have our challenges. Yeah, we wish, it wouldn't bother me if I had an extra $5 million. No, I would figure something, right? But the bottom line is everything that I do have is all from him. My desani loch leisavid. That's the menschlichkeit. And what we're celebrating is who we are as a nation, and what our mission and our job is to be the Or Lagoyim that we are what? A flame. We are a flame and we are supposed to be a model. Someone said to me, what was this thing? The Kapishnitzer Rebbe, I told you the story once, I think, years ago. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was a Rosh called Torah in Eretz Yisrael. He passed away in, I believe, 1998. At his funeral, there were 100,000 people, which at that time was like the most ever. Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was Yerushalmi. Okay? He grew up in Yerushalayim in Meir Sha'arim, deep, like in the ghetto, so to speak. Okay? He had a flat Yerushalmi hat. Okay? By his funeral, there were 100,000 people. And that was a funeral with charedim, with non-observant, with white yarmulkes, with black yarmulkes, with no yarmulkes, with everyone was there. He was so beloved. My Rebbe used to say that when he used to walk home with him from yeshiva, so people would come to ask him questions, and there was like a woman that was, one time he was walking with Rav Shlomo Zalman, and an elderly woman comes and says, Rav Shlomo Zalman achav hashayla. And Rav Shlomo Zalman bends down to her and says, yeah. With such sweetness and humility, and what could I do to help you? Rav Shlomo Zalman had a visitor one day. The visitor's name was the Kapishnitzer Rebbe. The Kapishnitzer Rebbe, I told you a story about him. I'm not going to tell it to you now because it's late. Fantastic story about the Kapishnitzer Rebbe. I told you about him on Yom Kippur. Anyways, another time. The Kapishnitzer Rebbe was way older than Rav Shlomo Zalman. He could have been his father. And they were coming outside after the visit. The Kapishnitzer Rebbe was waiting for his taxi. The Kapishnitzer Rebbe was much older, so Rav Shlomo Zalman brought out a chair. And he said, the Kapishnitzer Rebbe, please sit down. And the Kapishnitzer Rebbe said, I can't sit down. So why not? He said, because my father always told me, he said, anything you do in life, always pretend that there's a camera watching you. And Hashem is taking a picture, a snapshot right now. He says, how would it look if I am sitting on a chair when you, Reb Shlomo Zalman, are standing? I can't sit down. Again, the Kapishnitzer Rebbe was old enough to be Reb Shlomo Zalman's father. That was his humility. Reb Shlomo Zalman is the Paisik Hadar, he's the Rav of the whole generation. That's how we have to think. Not about it, forget Hashem. Yeah, Hashem is looking. But besides that, we're on display. We're on display and people are looking at us and saying, how is Leslie? How is Steve? How is Ted? How are we all reacting to anything? How do we react? Okay, I can't tell you the story now. I'll tell you the story now. There was a guy, I saw the story with a little bit different details. I saw it again recently with some other details. But basically there was a guy who was going through TSA, security at the airport. I heard about a guy that was traveling around to collect money for a certain need that he had. And, if you don't have TSA pre, then you have to basically undress to get through security. One of the things you have to take off is your shoes. TSA pre, best $85 spend, telling you guys, it's the best, even for just one trip. Anyways, this guy did not have TSA pre. And he took off his shoes, took off his jacket, took everything off, and he goes through. It was LaGuardia or Newark or JFK, I don't remember which airport. And he gets to the other side. He has his jacket, he has his suitcase, he has his luggage, whatever he needs, but he doesn't have shoes. He sees a pair of shoes sitting there, but it's not his shoes. So he goes over to the TSA agent. He says, my shoes never came through. He says, well, they obviously came through, but it seems like someone else took your shoes by mistake. And these other shoes were not fitting him. He's like, what's he going to do? And the entire time, he was calm as a pickle or a cucumber, whatever it is, right? And they, okay, he's walking through the air. The TSA says, I'm sorry, I can't help you. He's trying to find a store there to buy shoes, garnished, there's nothing to do. He's walking around the airport with socks. A woman comes over to him and says, I'm so impressed. Can I offer you slippers? My slippers are pink, but you know what I'm saying. Anyways, he's wearing these slippers that obviously are not for him. He's trying to get around. The entire time, he is calm. He is composed, not getting all bent out of shape. On the plane, he's sitting next to a fellow. They were going to Australia. And he starts talking to the guy. The guy says, what are you doing? He tells her, I live in Israel and I do this, my job. And he tells him the different things that he's going for. I came to collect money for this thing. I have to collect another $20,000. They're getting ready to get off the plane in Australia. The guy writes him a check for $20,000. He says, you made such an impression on me. You lost your shoes. You had so much discomfort walking around in your socks, not only the embarrassment, but the discomfort of not having shoes. And throughout the entire time, you never once lost your cool. Here's your $20,000. Go home and enjoy your family. That's what's an Arla Goyim. He wasn't there for a show, but he lived like he was living for a show because that's the way a Yid is. The Torah macht mention. If we remember that, Bez Hashem, we'll have a wonderful Shavuos, a wonderful year of growth in Torah and Dveikus in Hashem. Bez Hashem, L'shana Toiva, Tichaseivu, V'seichaseimu. We should have a wonderful, blessed year in our Ruchnius, and I look forward to seeing Bez Hashem on the other side of Shavuos.
Cool. Thank you.